Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to Misinformation in Science and Society. Here to listen, not to judge. I'm your host Annie, and today with us we have Neha Gour. Alright, so welcome. Could you please introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about what you do?
Thank you for having me. My name is Neha Gour. I'm from India. I am pursuing my PhD in communication from George Mason University. Um, and my current research is based at the interface of health communication, climate change, and misinformation. So these are the areas where I'm focusing on right now. And in the past, I have experience of working in the public policy field. So I have been working with a research think tank on various important issues, and I hope I get a chance to discuss some of them today.
Yeah, absolutely. So what inspired you to choose your career path?
So that's a very good question because communication is not a very well recognized field globally. For example, if I have to speak about India, communication is still not one of the top three or top five fields that a lot of students will go into usually. And that's because there is not a lot of communication that's happening about communication field.
Mhm.
Interestingly. So when I did my master's and when I got some field experience of working in the field of communication, I realized there's a huge gap in the message that is shared, say, by the government, the message that is shared by the policymakers, or even the message that is disseminated through campaigns and the information that people consume and the way they receive or the way they react to that information, there's a huge gap between the two sources. And that is sort of what inspired me to help make the communication process more effective. And of course, we had the unfortunate COVID-19 pandemic, which even increased the issue of, information empiricality. The issue of misinformation increased, and it only continues to increase now. The issue of climate change is so real, but not a lot of people are ready to talk about it or even accept the fact that climate change is real. And I am an ardent believer that communication plays a very pivotal role in bridging this information gap that's out there. And these are some of the primary reasons that motivated me to, choose a career path in the field of communication.
Absolutely. And you also addressed to why you think truth and combating misinformation is very important in that answer. So what specifically do professionals in your field do to tackle misinformation? What are some specific things that are maybe unique to your um profession?
So I would say there are two parts of what professionals in the field of communication would usually do to combat misinformation. The first part of it is doing a lot of ground research to really understand what are the missing pieces out in the field, what persuades people to believe in misinformation, what are the sources people rely on to consume misinformation,
Mhm.
and how does that false information influence their decision making on a day-to-day basis? Like media in general plays a very important role in each one of our lives, and the advent of misinformation is only leading to negative decision making, both at an individual level and also at a community level. So one important aspect of this is to really measure and analyze what are the causes of misinformation and how are people reacting to this information.
Mhm.
But at the same time, once you know what are the certain reasons for the increase in the issue, how do we combat that on field? How do we implement the solutions in the ground one to one? So a lot of professions in the field go with a literacy program training. For example, I know of professors who are doing amazing work in designing and implementing a lot of media literacy programs, digital literacy programs, so that people are aware of the fact that every information that we see is not true. There are so many layers to every information that we consume on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
uh, the role that sources play, and there could be some hidden agendas in certain sources, no matter how fancy or flashy it may look. So informing this certain piece of information to them. And, in fact, talking specifically of health misinformation, uh, there are a lot of people, a lot of patients who go to the doctors today, and instead of telling them their symptoms, they're pretty confident enough to go and tell them that, hi, doctor, this is the issue that I have. Tell me what to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is really impacting the patient-provider communication. The doctors are a little angry with the fact that the way patients can come and communicate with them, it has become very different because there is a believed assumption that the patients are already aware of what's happening
Mm-hmm.
because they rely on the internet for just typing down the symptoms and figuring out what's wrong with them. But the challenge here is that not a lot of doctors are aware how to tackle the situation, right? So there are a lot of programs which are actually training the doctors on how to deal with this kind of health misinformation that comes from the patient's end, and how to effectively make sure that the patient-provider communication is leading to positive results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, you mentioned medical like misinformation or just like misinterpretation or like assumptions. What are some other like particularly like harmful types of misinformation that you've encountered in your career and in life?
Uh, there are so many different types of misinformation, and a lot of misinformation has started circulating, especially after the pandemic era. Unfortunately, there are so many organizations who are doing a wonderful job in curbing the spread of misinformation. But if I talk about the types of misinformation, I think the general notion is that misinformation usually spreads in the form of textual information, which
Mhm.
means any information that we see in a written format, or any information that pops up in a news feed when we're using social media is a form of legit misinformation that we come across. However, certain different types of misinformation, which I personally believe has more negative impact, is visual misinformation, which is circulated in forms of images, in forms of memes, in forms of short bite-sized videos on different social media platforms,
Mhm.
uh, and all thanks to the great technologies that we have now. Even though there are great advantages of having these technologies in the field of health and in the field of climate and generally, there are also certain negative impacts, and I think it's very important for us at an individual level to be recognizing these negative impacts associated with the internet in general, and also to recognize how misinformation not only spreads in the form of textual information, but any images that we come across. There could be some hidden hints that will showcase that it's a misinformation. For example, you may come across any image which looks very realistic in form, all thanks to the technology software that we have. But looking for any um, grammatical issues, or looking for uh, any other visual things that may not be there generally, but it has been added to spread some kind of misinformation. So these are some of the different types of misinformation which I personally believe has a very negative impact, which leads to poor decision making in society.
Mhm. Yeah, so you talked about going off of that, you talked about like social media and how that affects like information. How about like technology such as like AI, which are not like people spreading information, but more um, like just like technology, like how has that like impacted the spread of misinformation, communication, and I guess. related to that, how can we like ensure the accuracy of the information we get from like anywhere, including in AI or like in articles and like in on like social media?
Yeah, I think to answer that question, I will just very briefly speak about the difference between misinformation and disinformation.
Hmm.
Because these are two different concepts altogether, but there has been a lot of confusion regarding what misinformation actually means and how is it different from disinformation.
Yeah.
So misinformation is the information that is spread without an intent to harm the public, right? Which means anyone who is forwarding any messages on social media or anyone who is consuming the information themselves may not really be aware of the fact that information is going to harm them or harm others.
Hmm.
Versus disinformation, which is more of a propaganda where the information is deliberately shared in the form of falsehood to maybe deceive the public or to persuade the public to choose a different path in terms of the decision making or to change their ideology.
Hmm.
Okay. So intent is something which is very important in misinformation and disinformation, and this is what makes the two of them different. Now, in order to answer your question as to the role of AI, when it comes to specifically misinformation, we have a lot of softwares today which are readily available free of cost, which makes the work of editing any images very simple, creating images very simple, even coming up with textual paragraphs very simple just by throwing in some keywords, right? So all of these softwares will make the output look so legit and so credible that it may be difficult to spot whether this is an accurate information or not, right? And not to forget the role of a lot of video editing software, which fosters the bite-sized videos that are shared on social media platforms, and how easy and how simple it has become to, to come up with short videos to spread information.
Hmm.
Now, one part of this is that all these technologies are wonderful when it comes to effective communication strategies. It can be easily used to spread legit information by the government during any pandemic crisis, or even by people in the position of authority. However, when these technologies are used without knowing that these technologies can create information that will be harming people's decision making, that is where the main challenge is. And being aware of the fact that everything that appears fancy or everything that appears to be so good is not really true. So having a critical approach is very important. And I think the second part of the question was how can we measure the accuracy of the information that we receive, right? Um, so I think for that, I would say I can there are so many points that's coming to my mind right now. But maybe I will boil it down to three main points that can be used to identify any misinformation. The first one is whenever we come across any information online or even offline through any media, or even when we are speaking with our friends, our family members, our colleagues, we will definitely come across some information which may not be absolutely correct, which may also be a form of misinformation, right?
Hmm.
So one of the ways of identifying that is to double check the sources, which means irrespective of how trustworthy you think the source is, um, if you think the information is not absolutely correct, or if you feel the information is too good to be true, it's always a wise decision to double check the source.
Hmm.
Uh, for example, if we have to rely on any information related to health or climate, we have certain organizations like the World Health Organization, we have the CDC, or we have NIH who are doing amazing work in combating misinformation specifically. So going to their website and double checking whether that information really exists or it is just up in the air without any evidence is a good idea. That is the first thing I would say. The second point will be to have a critical approach, like I was saying before. Whenever you come across any new piece of information, for example, we had COVID, we all didn't know what COVID was. And every information we came across, uh, a lot of us would have thought that to be real. But I think having a critical approach here is very important. Do not read any information and assume that to be true. Uh, think critically and analyze the information critically, and keep questioning consistently whether this information is right or wrong. If it is right, what are the reasons that make it right? You know, so I think having that critical and curious mind is something which can be a good idea.
Mm,
Um, and I think the third point here would be to look for the qualification of the sources. For example, today we have lots of social media influencers who very casually share information related to or some sensitive issues related to the health, for example, right? But in reality, they may not have qualifications or certifications to be speak about health,
mm-hmm.
right? In that situation, um, it just makes sense to check whether the information that I'm receiving is that health information coming from a health professional or not,
Mm,
whether that person has any idea about what's health or what's really happening in the industry. So if I question these things, it may make me a bit more clearer and get me closer to the truth that's out there.
yeah, for sure. So, those are actually like pretty much all my questions related to misinformation. If there is nothing else you would like to add, I have just like two final questions just for fun.
Sure.
All right, so the first one is like what inspires you the most like in life? Like that can be like a person, like a book, an idea, and anything that inspires you.
I think I could I could talk about a person who inspires me the most and about one idea that inspires me the most.
Mm-hmm.
Coming to the person, I think my father is someone who inspires me a lot, and he has been inspiring me since I was like very small.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think one of the important lessons that I've learned from him is that if you genuinely believe in a call, and if you think you're on the right path, even if you do not have any people around you supporting you at that point of time, do not be afraid to be the first one standing in the line, and be patient and let others join you. But till the time there's no one around you, but you still believe in the cause, continue with the decision. So I think that has been like a game changer advice for me so far, and that has really inspired me.
Mm-hmm.
And if I would speak about one idea that inspires me is, just taking small steps every day to bring some positive impact into society, and making sure that there is some kind of information sharing being done to make sure that people are aware of what's really going out there. Now here I'm talking specifically about misinformation. Just because I am doing my research on that, I feel it's the responsibility on my end to make sure that on a daily basis there is some kind of information sharing that I do from my end to make sure that this info that gets out there is reducing its strength.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. So, last question, just to close this out. Do you have any like advice you would give to like people, especially like teens?
Yeah, that's a very nice question. I think one piece of advice I would have for the teens is given we are living in the age of digital era,
Mm,
where we are constantly consuming information from digital platforms like the internet or social media platforms. And these are the platforms we highly rely on for information. Being aware of the fact that everything we see is not true, and again, having that critical approach is very important.
mm,
Everything we see on social media is not true. People may look very happy. It may come across as people are enjoying the best of their lives on social media, but trust me, that's not the reality always.
mm,
So having that shield in front of your eyes before accepting or believing in any form of information is extremely critical because these are some sort of persuasion that impacts the mental health.
Hmm.
So making sure that you have this critical approach to not believe everything outrightly is extremely significant today.
Yeah, thank you for that. And thank you for this interview, and for your time. I learned a lot and it was great meeting you.
Thank you so much for having me and congratulations on the wonderful job you're doing.
Thank you so much. All right, take care.